The Vigilantes won. It's a terrifying prospect, if you ask me, that we now have to live in a world where you can't rely on police. In fact, you can only rely on police to side with criminals. It's been this way for a few years. It existed decades ago, but it's gotten to the point where the scales have tipped. We have this story, which many of you probably already know, but for quick context for anyone who missed it, a woman went to her home in New York. She inherited this home from her parents who died. She was seeking to sell the property. As I've explained, many people do this. Their parents will pass. They leave behind this wealth that they generated to their children so their children can live better lives. When this woman arrived at her house, the locks were changed and there were squatters there. She called the police. The police arrived and did everything in their power to defend the criminals illegally occupying the home. They warned the woman if she changed the locks, she would be arrested, even though these men who were in the building had no proof they lived there. Eventually, she said, "It's my house. I'm changing my locks." She had a deed. She had proof. The cops did not care. They arrested her. Following this, vigilantes showed up. Just to have a conversation. They say, vigilantes. No, these were just guys trying to talk to those who lived there and ask them, what was going on. And here's what I said yesterday. Let me tell you something. These squatters have fled in disgrace. They fled. They covered their faces and they ran. Now, there's one guy still in the basement, and he's like, I have nothing to do with any of this. I have no idea what's going on. I paid a deposit. I want my money back. To that guy, I'm sorry, dude. You got scammed. That's not the fault of Adele, who owns the home. But I want to make sure everybody hears this next part. We got big news, okay? Daniel Penny, he's got his trial date set. They're charging him with criminally negligent homicide for the killing of a man who threatened to murder people on a train. New York City has been plagued by violent crime. A guy just got shot in the head in the subway. A woman had her legs severed after being pushed onto the tracks into a train that was coming. You had a viral video now of someone getting slashed in the face with a knife. Crime has gotten so bad that the governor deployed the National Guard. Yet here we are. Now this next part, it's my favorite part. It's unfortunate. I don't like living this way. I don't think we should have to live this way. But you know what happens when vigilantes, you call them vigilantes, we call them good old boys, we call them some local neighbors, whatever you want to call them. They show up to that house. They knock on the door. The squatter answers. And the guy says, just curious what you think you're doing in this house. And the squatter says, look, man, I live here. And the guy says, do you? You think you live here? Okay, I'm going to tell you what. The first thing I'm going to do is ask you politely. By tomorrow, you are not here anymore, if you catch my drift. That's all I'm going to say. And he walks away. When the press asked these quote-unquote vigilantes what they were doing, they said, we're just here to talk. We're just here to talk. The squatters got the message. You know why? What would end up happening if those squatters said, take your warning and shove it? See, the squatters know exactly what they're doing. They know they have no right to be there. They know that the police may protect them because the police are criminals all the same. I'm not saying every cop. I'm saying these cops in New York, they're communists. But you know what happens if these squatters stuck around? They wake up in the middle of the night to a tap on the shoulder. And when they open their eyes, there's three guys in ski masks holding crowbars. And the moment he opens his eyes, wham, right onto his kneecap. He screams. He screams. They point the crowbar at him and say, next time, you won't be so lucky. And the guys in ski masks leave. Maybe that squatter calls the cops. Burglars. I was attacked. They had ski masks. I couldn't see their faces. I didn't know what they were wearing. I woke up, kneecap shattered. Dude's not going to be walking for a couple of years. When the police come, they say, well, let's ask the neighbors what happened. The neighbors say, I didn't see nothing. That's why these squatters fled. And that's what it's coming to in New York. Perhaps that's the way it used to be. It's not going to be neighborhood watch because the police are against you on this one. Penny is the perfect example. The police are not your friends, at least in New York City. And everybody says, no, look, you look at the small towns, things are good. Yeah, no. That's fair point. Fair point. I totally get that. Day-to-day basis, 80% of the time, I'd say. When you're dealing with a small town, because I know my cops too. There's like 5 of them. We know them personally. That's what I'm talking about. Small town, it's not the same thing. Small town police are basically your friends protecting your neighborhood. These police departments in metropolitan areas and suburbs, not the same thing. Not at all. There should be no blind back to blue. None of it. Because New York, they replaced their cops with communists. So here we are. This is where we're going. Take a look at this. Daniel Penny to stand trial in October for a New York City subway chokehold death. Penny has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Let me show you what the media is doing. This is a tweet from Ian Miles Chong. ABC News reports, Daniel Penny, the former Marine who choked a homeless man to death last May in a New York City subway car, will stand trial beginning October 8th, a judge determined Wednesday. Wait. What is this? Their headline is, the former Marine who choked a homeless man to death last May on a New York City subway car. Now, Daniel Penny's about to pay the price. You see, the story goes, anybody who actually followed the news, the story goes that you got Jordan Neely, an unhinged man, enters the subway, screaming about how he needs money, he needs resources. He doesn't care if he goes to prison, takes his jacket off, throws it on the ground. According to some witnesses, he was threatening to kill them. Daniel Penny and 2 other men subdue Jordan Neely. Penny puts him in a chokehold. Many people said he held him too long. The guy ended up passing out, but he didn't die right away. He died sometime after from complications due to the chokehold. Now, Penny is a guy who is seeing a violent man threaten people, with reports of crime being so intense in the subway that we are not at the point where they've deployed the National Guard. I think that context proves Daniel Penny is not the bad guy here. He's a good Samaritan who thought he was going to save the lives of his fellow passengers. But when you live in a communist state, this is what you get. I'm going to throw it back to this quote from Sultan Nen, something from the Gulag Archipelago I think everybody needs to hear. In the Criminal Code of 1926, there was a most stupid Article 139 on the limits of necessary self-defense, according to which you had the right to unsheath your knife only after the criminal's knife was hovering over you, and you could stab him only after he had stabbed you. And otherwise, you would be the one put on trial. And there was no article in our legislation saying that the greater criminal was the one who attacked someone weaker than himself. This fear of exceeding the measure of necessary self-defense led to total spinelessness as a national characteristic. A hoodlum once began to beat up a Red Army man, Alexander Zakharov, outside a club. Zakharov took out a folding penknife and killed the hoodlum. And for this, he got 10 years for plain murder. Quote, and what was I supposed to do? He asked, astonished. Prosecutor Artisashevsky replied, you should have fled. So tell me, who creates hoodlums? Welcome to your brave new world. New York City is going to see a massive rise in vigilantism. And this is not where it begins. It has already started, my friends. This story from November. Subway vigilantes will continue until New York City deals with rampant crime. Another week, another violent incident in the subway. This time a vigilante firing shots across a subway platform to deter a mugger. You want to know why? Let me tell you why. The police are arresting homeowners. Let me tell you why the National Guard gets deployed into the subways. You may be saying, now hold on a minute, how does this make sense? You got police arresting homeowners, but they're searching the bags of little old ladies in the subway. The National Guard is not there to stop crime. The National Guard is not there to stop murder. The police on the subways checking your bags in New York, it's to stop you. It's to stop you from defending yourself and your community from these violent psychopaths. Made perfectly clear by the fact that even with the National Guard deployed, there was a shooting in the subway, in a train, at Hoyt Skirmerhorn subway station. Slashing, stabbings, people are still dying. The National Guard was not deployed to stop criminals. Read the Sultan Nen passage. It is not about the criminals, as he wrote. The criminals, the poor souls, they don't know better. But you do. So you better fall in line. And when this guy comes to push you in front of a train, that's so unfortunate. That poor man didn't know better. Jordan Neely may have been threatening to kill everyone, but it's okay. He didn't know better. Daniel Penny knew exactly what he was doing. Therefore, he should rot in prison for criminally negligent homicide. I don't want to live that way. It is not a good thing that vigilantes are on the rise. But this is a communist takeover. These cops, all right, these police officers who arrest the woman. I think we have a video. They show photos of the cops arresting the woman here. How come you got these criminals? How come these cops, they're going to take Daniel Penny in cuffs and they're going to bring him to a place where the communists are going to try and destroy him? They're also going to arrest the homeowner for trying to change the locks on her own house. These guys couldn't even prove they lived there. Stop telling me to back the blue, baby. You know what I see? I see the Democrats say vote blue no matter who, and the Republicans say back the blue. And I'm just like, you know what, man, there was a time and place for this. There was. It's not here anymore. These cops right here, this lady and this guy, are arresting the homeowner who did nothing wrong. But I'll tell it again. There's going to be a strong message sent. And maybe the end result is a net positive after some amount of time. I'd prefer to live in a country where the police enforce the law, they exercise appropriate discretion, and when a squatter is in a house who can't prove they live there, and the homeowner's got the deed and says this person's a squatter, the cop just says, I'm going to make things easy for you. You can leave right now and never come back. Or we can do things the hard way. That's what you'd expect to happen, right? And they come up with all these arguments like, well, how is the cop supposed to know? Look, there are certainly circumstances where there's a landlord-tenant dispute. That's fine. But this guy in this house, according to reports, this woman shows up with the deed. I live here. The guy says, I got a deal to live here. With who? Doesn't matter. It does matter. If I'm a cop and you come at me and say, I live here, I cut a deal with somebody, I'd say, tell me who cut you the deal. Show me the lease. I don't have one. Too bad. Get out. Don't care. Ain't playing that way. You didn't get a lease. You ain't staying here. You don't got a lease with this lady. You ain't staying here. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. But these cops, you see, they're communists. So when they showed up and this guy says, I live here, they say, can you show us anything that shows you've been here longer than a month? He pulled out some receipt for some kind of work. We don't even know what it was. Not a lease. A receipt? That's not proof you've been living there. Imagine going to the DMV and being like, I need to get a new ID. Okay, what's your address? It's right here. See, I have this receipt. I paid for a guy to mow my lawn. They're going to be like, works for us. Here's your government-issued ID. Never going to happen. So why would the police accept that? What's going to come next? You think Daniel Penny's the beginning? He ain't the beginning. Not at all. Not at all. I tell you what's coming next. We've been talking about this one for a little bit. Shocking moment. TikToker tells illegal immigrants how to invade American homes and invoke squatters' rights. This provocative video is seen more than 3 million times. This is what's coming to New York. In New York, what you're going to end up getting, this guy right here, he made a video where he says, you invade the home, you take it over, it's yours now. You fix it up, you sell it. What's going to happen with New York? So they're bringing in millions of non-citizens into this country. I'll tell you what I fear. And I'll stress again, we do not want this future. But I'll tell you where we're at. Democrats are bringing in massive waves of criminal aliens into this country. It gives them electoral power in Congress. You think Democrats actually have a majority in Congress? They don't. They do not represent this country. They are using criminal aliens to fluff their congressional district numbers so they get extra seats, an estimated 13 to 17 extra seats. So you're wondering why it is. How come the Republicans don't have a stronger majority? They say, haha, you thought there was going to be a red wave. They all blame Donald Trump. No, it's because Democrats should be down by 13. Republicans should be up by 13 on top of their already majority. But they've been cheating. What's coming in New York? I'll tell you, these guys, they're going to go on Zillow. They're going to go on Craigslist. They're going to find vacant properties. They're going to do simple things. They're going to call a landscaper. Come mow my lawn. Do you know how landscapers work? They show up, they mow the lawn, they leave. You never talk to them. So let's say you got a rental property. It's on the market. You're saying we're trying to find a tenant. Sunday morning, 7 a.m., guy comes and mows the lawn. Ain't nobody says anything about it. Squatter has the bill. He waits 30 days from the point where he got the lawn mowed. Then he shows up to the vacant property, kicks the door in, breaks the lock, picks the lock, whatever. Calls a locksmith and says, I live here. Locksmith says, you have proof? It's like, oh, I got a receipt for my landscaping. Locksmith might not accept it, maybe. Maybe he says, whatever, it's fine by me. I don't care. If it's good enough for the cops, good enough for me. Or he just kicks the door in. Goes to the hardware store, buys new locks, changes the locks. In fact, I got to be honest, picking locks, really, really easy. People in movies, I got to be completely honest. You Google search how to pick a lock, you're going to be like, you'll learn it in 3 minutes. Not kidding. Locksmiths have things called, what are they called? Like pick guns. And they have things called rakes. You literally just take a torsion wrench and they take a tool and they put it in and they move it really fast and pop it right open. There's things called bump keys. Super easy for these people to get in. They get in the house. They live there now. It's theirs. They don't got to think about anything else. One day, landlord shows up with prospective new tenants. And when they come to the door, the keys don't work. And they say, oh, that's strange. The keys I have aren't working. Squatter comes to the door and says, can I help you? And they say, what are you doing? What are you doing in my house? Excuse me, this is my house. It's my house now. In fact, I tell you what, squatter doesn't even talk to the landlord, just calls the police. Calls the police right away and says, I got someone trying to break in my house. The police show up right away. They see the homeowner with prospective tenants standing there confused, being like, we don't know what's going on. And the cops say, okay, hold on, knock on the door. Squatter opens up the door and says, I don't know why they're trying to get in my house. I told them to leave. They won't leave. Cop says, you live here, sir? Yes, I do. Okay. They say, homeowner says, no, I'm the homeowner. This is a rental property. Look, it's listed. And they say, sir, can you prove you live here? He goes, look, I got a receipt for the landscaping. Like, I don't know what else you want from me, but I live here. These people are crazy. The cops say, okay, bye. That's it. End of story. That's the end of it. You're going to have these criminal aliens coming in, and they're going to be doing things like this en masse. So do you know what comes next? It is not what you want to see. It is not anything I want to see. But you cannot bring in criminal aliens like this guy who gloat and laugh and say, steal their property. It's ours now. Ain't going to be no neighborhood watch. Neighborhood watch is organized. You get charged with conspiracy. This is wild. People started forming neighborhood watch groups because of crime. What ends up happening? You join a neighborhood watch. You put up signs everywhere. One day a guy breaks into your house. Guy in his home shoots and kills that guy. Guess what happens? Now it's a conspiracy. You guys had planned in advance action to be taken against these people. It was murder. Take a look at what Sultan Nen said about communism. This is we were talking to we were talking about self-defense on Timcast RL, I believe. And that's what happens. To charge you with conspiracy. So you know what's going to happen? Ain't going to be no neighborhood watch group. Just a couple of good old boys with ski masks and crowbars. And when these people show up to take a house like this guy, they're going to wake up and they ain't going to have a kneecap no more. And that is a terrifying prospect. That shouldn't be that way. Criminals should not be taking houses. People should not be taking the law in their own hands. But the police are on the side of the criminals now, so the result is inevitable. Mafia. That's what you get. And the government, they're going to come after them for sure because these criminals in New York ain't going to want any competition. But it won't matter because they're not going to be able to trace anything. They're not going to be able to trace anything back to anybody. It's just going to be some dude and his buddy, and they're going to hear about it, and they're going to put on a ski mask, and they're going to show up in the middle of the night, and it's going to be it. What I imagine would happen then is if these vigilantes actually rise to this degree, which I certainly expect. That's why these guys fled. You don't need to do nothing. You need only knock on that door and say, I'm going to tell you this one time. You leave now. Have a good day. That's it. Message loud and clear. I have to imagine, growing up in Chicago with all these gangs, what do these people think is going to happen when they squat in a property in gang territory? Your gangs ain't like the mob, but they're similar enough. I got to tell you something, dude. The way the gangs operate in Chicago, this guy makes a move on Chicago to try and squat in a property 6 feet under. Ain't no question. He ain't even going to wake up. The gangs in Chicago don't mess around. It's crazy. You hear these stories, man. Growing up, I'll tell you what I heard. I don't know a whole lot, but there are a lot of gangs, super violent. They don't care about nothing. You walk into their neighborhood and you're the wrong race, and they're gonna hurt you. I hear these stories. You're Latino, you walk into gang territory in a black neighborhood. They say, "What you doing here?" Insult, racial slur. You need to turn around. If you're white, ain't gonna be that nice. A friend of mine walked into a black neighborhood in Chicago. It's extremely racially segregated, but a notorious gang territory. I'm not saying this is all of the black neighborhoods or white neighborhoods or Latino neighborhoods. There are certain black neighborhoods that are heavily gang influenced. Certainly, there are certain mixed in white neighborhoods too. I'm not trying to make that distinction. But it was a white person who walked into a black neighborhood, and this older black man walked up to my friend and said, "Buddy, you got to turn around and get out of here right now. It ain't going to be pretty if you try and walk into this neighborhood." The reason is these gangs have initiation rituals of murder. You want to join the gang, you got to kill somebody. Why? Because they got to have the dirt on you. They got to be able to have something over you. Often it's a retaliation murder. They'll go to a kid who's 13 in the neighborhood. They'll say, "You have no choice. You join the gang or we're going to mess up you and your family." These guys are causing us problems because the kids will get out. They tell the kid, "You'll go to juvie till you're 18, then you're out. If I do it, I go to prison for the rest of my life." That's the game they play. These people, they want to come into places like Chicago. It ain't a question of vigilantism. It's a question of you cross those gangs, you cost them money. You ain't going to like what happens next. In New York, we already seen it. The vigilantes outright sent that message. And they sent these guys packing. Vacate the home after national backlash post-millennial? Yeah, perhaps. I think what happened was these guys showed up. They said to this man, "You ain't going to play a game with us because you ain't going to like what kind of game that is." And he just immediately was like, "Message received. I'm out." This is what's going to happen to all the squatters. No one's playing games anymore. The police are on the side of the criminals. That means to enforce property rights, the mob and gangs are the only thing. That's a scary prospect, man. You don't want to live in Chicago in these gang territories. You don't want to see what that's like. You don't want to see what this turns into. But that's where we're at. It's part of the process to destabilize the machine. They want to destroy our system. They want to strip you of your inheritance. They want to give your country away. And it doesn't just go one way. We're going to see masked vigilantes. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.